Hey guys, Tyler here. Over the past few years, I've made retrospective videos on almost every Star Trek series and movie, including some of the newer entries like Discovery. In my Discovery video, I called the show divisive, which some commenters felt was inaccurate since most real Trek fans, in their words, hated it. Whether that's true or not, I think it's fair to say that Starfleet Academy, the latest live-action entry in the Star Trek franchise, has been extremely polarizing. Set in Discovery's 32nd century time frame, Academy attempts to balance teen drama and comedy with some of the classic kinds of sci-fi concepts Trek is known for. And yet, the result in my opinion is a mixed bag. Starfleet Academy has been one of the most exhausting entries in modern Trek to read and participate in discourse about, but while I think the show gets some things right, it does also get a lot of things wrong. In this video, I'd like to take a level-headed, nuanced view of one of the most hotly debated Trek shows to date. Let's get started. For those genuinely interested in watching Academy's first season, since it recently concluded as of the release of this video, I will try to steer clear of some major spoilers, but in order to diagnose Academy's shortcomings, I do need to delve into a few character and plot details, so just keep that in mind. As I mentioned in the intro, Academy is set in the 32nd century and features a number of characters from Discovery like Admiral Charles Vance and Jet Reno, who we'll have a few more words about in a bit. Certainly, Holly Hunter steals the show as Captain Nala Ake, a half-lanthanite who serves as Chancellor. Lanthanites are a long-lived species first mentioned in Star Trek Strange New Worlds and featured in the form of the character Pelia, and both of these characters do a good job of encapsulating the sort of detached wisdom, so to speak, of living through so many eras of crisis and peace. Robert Picardo also returns as the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager, and a bunch of relatively lesser-known or first-time actors round out the rest of the main cast. These groupings, essentially the Academy cadets and their instructors, make for a particularly unique dynamic for a Star Trek show, though how successful this is varies. For the review part of this video, I do want to start off with some positives because there are some. First things first, like I've hinted at, Holly Hunter as a Starfleet captain just works. I think a lot of people underestimate how much of an influence Elastigirl had on males of my generation. As others have pointed out, Nala's generally casual demeanor is balanced near perfectly with her command ability when the situation calls for it. I do think sometimes her nonchalant attitude is played up a little too intensely, but in universe, she feels like she's earned it, having served the Federation for centuries in Starfleet before moving into this academic setting. The Doctor is also a delight to see on screen as always, having been one of the most interesting parts of Voyager, a show I've notably taken some issue with. Tig Notaro's performance as Reno is also golden. She was always one of my favorite parts of Discovery, and she perfectly sells that dry, sarcastic humor in a way that would come off as annoying from a lesser actor. She's also in a relationship with the Klingon Jem'Hadar hybrid Lura Thok, whose abrasive personality is a lot to take in, but has slowly grown on me. I think the show's exploration of how the post-burn galaxy has affected individual races and the Federation as a whole is executed better than in Discovery's third season, which seemed to just axiomatically assume that putting the Federation back together was the right move without much examination of why that would be the case. As for the cadets, I tend to like the Klingon Jaden the most, as his character has been used to explore how the Klingons have coped with these galactic changes. I enjoyed episode 4's focus on his personal struggles as a Klingon who has no desire to become a warrior but wants to be a healer. 21st century Star Trek fleshing out cultures like the Klingons and Orions beyond their traditional portrayal has been a positive development in my eyes, and I'm a sucker for Klingon-centric episodes. This examination also serves as a good example of how post-Roddenberry Trek has posed tough questions regarding Federation exceptionalism versus individual species' right to self-determination. The way it resolves feels a little phoned in, but Academy does does have some episodes that actually feel like Star Trek, and at its best, Academy does feature some compelling engagements in space with alien phenomena. A few episodes deliver exciting action set pieces and introduce new lethal threats like the human-alien hybrids called the Furies and a group of marauders called the Venari Raw. Lots of these plot threads also, naturally, involve the season's big baddie, Noose Braca, a Klingon Tellarite hybrid played by Paul Giamatti. To say he chews the scenery every time he's on screen is an understatement. Bro's downing an all-you-can-eat buffet. Giamatti is a huge Star Trek fan, so I'm happy for him, although he does often ham it up a little too much for my taste. His primary beef with Nala allows the writers to explore how the Federation continues to impose its morality on the rest of the galaxy, a sentiment that, to be fair, is not at all out of place for the franchise given how much it was explored in DS9. Subsequent episodes, of course, tie this in with the main young character Caleb's hard feelings towards the Federation, as, small spoiler for the pilot, he's only attending the Academy in exchange for Nala helping him find his mother. It also introduces some relatively medium stakes as opposed to the end-of-life as we know it stakes Discovery rehashed time and time again. Call me Mike Huckabee, I got these food metaphors. With the big reveal of Braca's plan, harkening back to an episode of Voyager that has been referenced quite a bit in speculation about potential effects on space travel in Trek's far future. Robert Picardo also offers a stunning performance in episode 8 that harkens back to the Voyager episode Real Life, in which the Doctor creates a holographic family and learns the pain that comes with loss and mourning of loved ones. Lieutenant Tilly makes a guest appearance in this episode, her newfound confidence from towards the end of Discovery, offering a welcome contrast to the cadets' brooding attitude. Okay, that was all the positives. One of the most recurrent issues many fans and I have had with this show is that the romance between Caleb and Terima, the daughter of the president of Beta Z, is not that interesting to watch. Romance has historically been a relative weak point for Star Trek, but Academy takes it to a whole new level. Even from the get-go, I didn't really care for Terima as a character, nor some of the other cadets like Darum, who hail from upper-class backgrounds and are just kind of unpleasant to be around. And another reason I felt like the show was wasting my time with this plot line is how Caleb clearly has so much more chemistry with the cadet Genesis.
Genesis? Yes, Genesis. How can you be deaf with ears like that?
An admiral's daughter who, like Terima, has a lot of weight of expectations on her shoulders, but isn't actually a dick to everyone all the time. Speaking of the cadets, I also have to say that generally scenes centered on them typically range from mildly irritating to downright unwatchable. And given the show is called Starfleet Academy, that's not good. This may come off as unfair to some, but I had to fast forward through some of their introductions because I was physically cringing so hard. The way the students talk to each other is also frustrating. Unlike previous Treks that elected to avoid contemporary slang, the cadets absolutely sound like typical Zoomers in 2026. I cannot imagine this aging well. The first episode was particularly painful to sit through, showcasing some of the worst aspects of what the show's trailers depicted, like the casual violence that modern live-action Trek has come to be infested with, while some one-liners throughout the show have genuinely made me chuckle.
Your relentless optimism is nightmarish.
Most of Academy's attempts at humor come off like the same forced MCU humor that has also infested television writing in the 2020s. Scenes with the adults typically don't elicit this reaction from me, but the way the cadets are written feels like an elder millennial's idea of what young people want to watch. The next few episodes do incrementally get better, but they still engage in some pretty tired tropes that have come to be expected in shows set in a school environment. You've got your roommate drama, your teen rivalry storylines, a debate episode, you name it. The show introduces the War College, which is said to have trained officers after Starfleet Academy closed following the burn. This explanation is at least consistent with Discovery's lore, as its third season depicted some of the consequences of Earth seceding from the Federation, which it rejoined by the fourth season. Earth became more isolated isolationist and defensive, and cultural remnants of that lasting into the setting of Academy, on paper, makes for some interesting conflict. Unfortunately, lots of scenes and episodes involving scuttles between the Academy and War College cadets feel like they're filling a school rivalry niche that, again, just checks a box. And the first two episodes also both rely on the kids save the day trope, which gives me Wesley Crusher vibes. Episode 5, co-written by Tawny Newsome, is intended to be a love letter to Deep Space Nine. It centers on the cadet Sam, short for Series Acclamation Mill, an emissary from a species of sentient holograms who are debating whether to establish relations with organics. We are treated to occasional scenes throughout the show in which Sam interacts with the Doctor and asks him questions about all those adventures he had on those better shows. This may be a hot take, but up to this point, at least, I had not been particularly enamored with Sam. As I've spoken about before on this channel, including in my Star Trek Picard retrospective, I've grown incredibly tired of storylines in mainstream media about artificial life forms. Because AI is currently being used to justify decimating the workforce and is helping accelerate the enshittification of everyday life, it's hard for me to sympathize anymore with non-organic characters being used as allegories for oppressed people. Despite the positive things I've had to say about characters like Data and the Doctor, it's felt like more of a chore to get invested in Sam. Anyway, in this episode, Sam strives to uncover what really happened to Benjamin Sisko after he left our realm to reside in the Celestial Temple. I can't really talk about this episode without spoiling the ending, so if you don't want to hear it, skip to this time code. The episode essentially canonizes that Sisko never returned, which feels sort of like a slap in the face to Avery Brooks' insistence that this be left open-ended, in part given the optics of black absentee fathers. I have no doubt that this was written with good intentions in mind, but it begs the question, why bring it up? Many people thought that this was one of the best Trek episodes of the century, but Jesus, I could not disagree more. In addition to its opening sequence being hyper-stylized in a way that's very off-putting, Sirach Lofton's guest appearance as Jake Sisko feels incredibly pointless. I'm aware it has a purpose in-universe, but I'm talking about from a nostalgia bait standpoint. Also, Tawny plays a Cardassian Trill hybrid professor, and it's nice to see her, but the specific reveal that her character is the latest host of the Dax symbiont feels very tacked on and unearned. Episode 6 does improve upon this low point, even paying lip service to fan complaints about Discovery's perceived failure to acknowledge the singularity drive as a post-dilithium warp concept. Unfortunately, Episode 7 returns with the same kind of teen melodrama prior episodes have dabbled in, and while Episode 8 does do a little more heavy lifting to garner sympathy for Sam, it delves deeply into trauma, certainly not an inappropriate concept for a Trek story, since this also heavily references the play Our Town, but one that feels like it's been explored to death in the franchise, especially in modern Trek. All of this gets at another huge issue that I have with Academy. The decision to set it in the 32nd century was not made lightly and was very intentional. While the creatives behind Star Trek have been hopeful for a show or movie set at Starfleet Academy since TOS was airing, hints and allusions towards it started dropping during Discovery's 4th season, particularly with the episode All Is Possible, considered something of a backdoor pilot given Tilly's instruction of Academy cadets in that episode. But as for why the 32nd century was chosen, the logic, at least according to showrunner Alex Kurtzman, is that the cadets would be inheriting massive challenges from the previous generation. Similar to how the isolation of the COVID-19 pandemic in real life has compounded social and economic stresses felt by young people in the modern economy. Such as myself. Link to my Patreon is in the description. The main problem I have with this reasoning is that the Picard era, set in the early 25th century in the wake of tragedies like the Mars attack, is, in my view, just as acceptable of a time frame for an Academy show. This is especially because a new generation of cadets in the early 25th century would be defending a federation that has also grown more insular and paranoid, mirroring real-life developments within the United States. And it would allow for more crossover characters characters to help serve as connective tissue between Academy and the Next Generation era. However, there's a secondary reason that the 32nd century was chosen, and it's the same reason that Discovery made its time jump to that century, because it would allow the writers the freedom to not be as constrained by canon. Now, I've previously praised this decision when it comes to Discovery's time jump, as I feel like it did allow Discovery's writers to do just that at a time when the show was being accused, with some justification, of violating Trek canon, or at least its spirit, with things like the Spore Drive, its portrayal of Section 31, Michael Burnham's backstory, and more. But there's a more insidious dimension to wanting to tell stories in this far-future time frame. In my Discovery video, I discussed how the premise of its third season, rebuilding the Federation following its collapse in the early fourth millennium, was partly based on a 2006 pitch by Bryan Singer to Paramount after Enterprise's cancellation. Singer's pitch included the quote, "Utopia as a goal is like the fire in a nuclear engine. Utopia in practice is stagnation, it's dry rot, eventually it's death," which is precisely where we find the United Federation of Planets a few centuries after the last age of discovery. Corporate shenanigans within Paramount's then parent company Viacom resulted in a moratorium on new seasons of Star Trek television until Discovery premiered in 2017, but Discovery's showrunners have admitted they wanted to run with elements from this pitch from the get-go, though they initially set it in the 23rd century to ground it in a familiar era while beginning to develop the characters. There's been a consistent refrain from many people in my audience that modern Star Trek is made by people who hate the franchise, or at least don't understand it. Now, I do think that's a little reductive, and certainly not true across the board. Lower Decks captures the spirit of Trek better than any show since perhaps the TNG era. Discovery's fourth season, while kind of boring, contains an optimistic portrayal of scientists and politicians cooperating to solve a problem. And Strange New Worlds' second season effectively canonizes United Earth's status as a de facto socialist political entity. Any accusations of wokeness do come off as kind of ironic given the franchise's progressive track record. That said, is modern live-action Trek made by people who maybe don't understand what made Trek so special in the first place and who have kind of a resentment for its post-scarcity roots? Perhaps. This isn't completely new, of course. Gene Roddenberry's original vision was not flawless, but after his death, there was certainly a concerted effort among writers like Ronald D. Moore to deconstruct aspects of the utopia Roddenberry had built. To his credit, Rick Berman, while holding back Trek in some ways, did act as a moderating force to retain some of the rules Roddenberry had laid out for how humans interact in Trek's future. And I think a lot of Moore's contributions were solid. As I've discussed before, DS9 excels at showcasing how the Federation struggles to maintain its moral integrity during times of stress like the Dominion War. But Kurtzman and his associates happily setting Academy in an era where that no poverty, no crime, no disease, no hunger, no war stuff has kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. That just doesn't sit right. It's part of the ongoing conversion of Trek from a bold left-wing outlook to a more neoliberal vehicle for generic sci-fi schlock. I don't even think that this is a consequence of Paramount being acquired by the Trump-aligned Oracle Corporation or bending the knee to the new administration. They were already trending this way under Biden. So no, I don't particularly care for Academy's setting, not just because half the time it looks like they're in fucking CGI land, but because of what it represents. I've been impressed with certain aspects of the show, but in my opinion, it's a valid reaction to argue that it falls short of what Trek should be. I have way more I could say about Trek's slow descent into neoliberalism, but I wanted to keep this video at a manageable length. If you do want to hear more about my thoughts on this subject, let me know down below. I also want to emphasize that this is just my opinion, and if you disagree with it, that is completely fine. But I do think it's important to maintain an open dialogue about this show and not pigeonhole fans and critics into this one-dimensional left versus right spectrum. There is no room for bigotry on the bridge, but there's also no room for dismissal of valid criticism. Infinite diversity in infinite combinations, bitch. That's something Mariner would say.
Live long and prosper. Don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute!
God, why'd they have to fucking cancel Lower Decks? So, would I recommend watching Starfleet Academy? Only if you have nothing else to do and care about the lore additions in the 32nd century. While it's hard for me to understand what anyone finds appealing about Star Trek Prodigy, with Academy, I can kind of file it under it's just not for me. It's the most aggressively 5 out of 10 thing I have ever seen in my life. That said, it's not as bad as Section 31. This video was sponsored by my Patreon. By becoming a patron of mine, you're not only supporting the channel, but you also get access to some awesome perks. There are 5 tiers, each with their own unique benefits. At the $2 per month level, you'll get your name in the credits of my videos, plus behind-the-scenes photos, patron-only polls, and special roles in my Discord, as well as ultra-high-resolution digital artwork like the maps from my videos where I chart the routes of various Starfleet ships. You can also read my Star Trek fan comic, Star Trek Endurance. At the $5 level, in addition to the previous rewards, you'll get exclusive monthly vlogs and occasionally extended cuts of some of my video essays. $10 gets you a follow on social media, if that's something you care about, plus a personalized thank you message in your Patreon inbox. At $25, you'll be credited as a top patron and get early access to all rough cuts and occasional script drafts. At the $50 level, I'll give you a verbal shout out in one of my videos. And at $100, well, let's just say at that point, I'm just grateful to have your support. Even if you sign up for the free tier, you can still follow some of my major channel updates. If you join as a YouTube member, you'll get similar perks, but not as much as on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/OrangeRiver to sign up today. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below and don't forget to share it. That stuff really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that as well so you won't miss future uploads, and click the bell icon to receive all notifications. If you want to support my work even further, you can become a patron at patreon.com/OrangeRiver, link in the description, or become a YouTube member by clicking the join button on my channel page. Or you can drop a one-time super thanks or PayPal donation, all are appreciated. Links to my PayPal, as well as my social media and merch store, where you can get a shirt like this designed by my good friend Phobia, are in the description too. Also, just as a reminder, I do have a second channel, OrangeRiver Plus, where I've uploaded the VODs of lots of my gaming streams, with more on the way. And in addition to some other goofy one-offs and extra behind-the-scenes content, I've officially made it my second streaming platform, so be sure to subscribe there too, so you don't miss any new content. That's all I have for this week. Live long and prosper. Do you like merchandise? If so, head on over to the new and improved OrangeRiver merch store. That's right, OrangeRiver is now officially on Spreadshop. I've got a bunch of awesome new designs, including All the Way Down,
All the Way,
Vape God, Tally, aka Best Girl,
it was totally worth it.
and what is perhaps my greatest design yet,
I love being
married to my husband.
Plus, I've got some of my classic designs like OrangeRiver Arrowhead, N7, and more. And there are even some new products like OrangeRiver hats. That's right, OrangeRiver hats now exist. Visit the link in the description to get discounts and other special deals on items from my store.